The sun began its slow and patient descent behind the rolling hills of the countryside, casting long and rhythmic shadows across the fields of tall grass that swayed gently in a breeze so soft it barely whispered. The air was cooling down just enough to feel crisp against the skin, while the scent of damp earth and drying hay drifted through the open window of the old wooden cabin. Inside, the clock on the mantel ticked with a steady and predictable thud that seemed to sync with the heartbeat of the house itself. There was no hurry in the movement of the clouds, which were painted in faint shades of lavender and dusty rose. A single bird flew across the horizon in a slow and purposeful arc, heading toward a nest hidden deep within the oak trees. The oak trees themselves stood as silent sentinels, with thick bark and leaves that rustled like the turning of old pages in a book that no one has read for many years. Imagine the sound of a small stream trickling over smooth gray stones just at the edge of the property, where the water is clear and cold. It moves around the curves of the earth without any effort at all, simply following the path of least resistance and making a soft, bubbling sound that repeats over and over again. The stones are worn smooth by decades of this constant flow, and they sit heavy and grounded in the silty bed of the creek. A small dragonfly lands on a reed and stays perfectly still for a long time, its wings reflecting the fading light in tiny glints of silver. The world is beginning to settle into a deep and quiet rest, where the worries of the day dissolve into the gray mist rising from the valley floor. You can picture a gravel path leading away from the house and into the woods, where each step makes a satisfying crunching sound that is rhythmic and dull. The trees grow closer together here, and the light becomes dim and filtered, like golden honey poured through a sieve. There is a smell of pine needles and old moss that has grown thick over the fallen logs. The moss is soft and damp, and if you were to touch it, your fingers would sink slightly into the green cushion of it. Everything here moves at a pace that is much slower than the world outside, as if time itself has decided to take a long nap under the canopy of the forest. The shadows continue to grow and stretch across the forest floor, covering the ferns and the tiny wildflowers that have closed their petals for the night. A squirrel scampers quietly up the trunk of a maple tree and disappears into the leaves without making a sound. The air is becoming heavier with the stillness of the approaching night, and the sky is now a deep indigo blue that stretches out forever. There are no harsh noises or sudden movements, only the gradual transition from light to dark and from wakefulness to a state of calm. You might imagine a large, heavy quilt being pulled up over your shoulders, one that is warm and familiar and smells of fresh air. The weight of the blanket is comforting and helps you feel anchored to the spot where you are resting. Far off in the distance, a single cowbell rings out, a soft metallic clank that signals the end of the day for the herd. It is a lonely but peaceful sound that echoes through the valley before fading into nothingness. The wind dies down completely until not even the smallest leaf is moving, and the world becomes a giant painting of silence. You think about the way the stars begin to appear one by one, starting with the brightest and then filling in the gaps with thousands of tiny pinpricks of light. They do not flicker so much as they glow with a steady and ancient energy that has been there for billions of years. The moon is a thin silver sliver hanging low in the sky, providing just enough light to see the outlines of the hills. Everything is safe and everything is quiet, and there is nothing that needs to be done except to listen to the sound of your own breathing. The breath goes in and out like the tide of a very calm ocean hitting a sandy beach. The sand is white and fine, and it shifts slightly under the pressure of the water before settling back into place. The ocean is dark and vast, but it is not stormy tonight. It is as flat as a sheet of glass, reflecting the stars above.
Back in the cabin, the embers in the fireplace are glowing a dull orange, and the wood occasionally gives a small pop as it settles into the ash. The heat is fading slowly, leaving the room at a perfect temperature for sleeping. The wooden floorboards are cool and solid, and the shadows of the furniture are soft and blurred at the edges. You can hear the sound of the wind chimes on the porch, moving just a fraction of an inch and creating a tiny chime that is almost too quiet to hear. The night is a long and empty space, filled with the potential for rest, and the mind begins to wander through corridors of soft thoughts that have no beginning and no end. One thought leads to another, like a chain of silk threads, and eventually they all dissolve into a gray blur of comfort. There is a sense of being completely protected and completely at ease, as if the entire universe has conspired to give you this moment of absolute peace. The cricket in the tall grass starts its rhythmic chirping, which is a steady pulse that anchors the silence rather than breaking it. It is a sound that has existed for as long as there have been summer nights, and it is a sound that means everything is exactly as it should be. The fields are drinking in the dew that is starting to form on the blades of grass, making them heavy and bowed toward the earth. The earth is warm and solid beneath the grass, and it radiates the heat it collected during the day back into the cool night air. The cycle of the day is complete, and the cycle of the night has begun with its slow and deliberate movements. You feel your muscles becoming heavy and relaxed, as if you are sinking into a cloud that is dense enough to hold you, but soft enough to let you disappear. The edges of your vision are soft, and the sounds around you are becoming distant and muffled, like they are coming from behind a thick velvet curtain. The world is far away, and you are here in this quiet space of comma and period and rhythm. The journey into sleep is a slow boat drifting down a river with no current and no wind, where you simply float along the banks of memory and dream. The river is wide and the water is deep and dark, and it carries you toward a place of total stillness, where the stars are mirrored on the surface of the water so perfectly that you cannot tell where the sky ends and the river begins.